right, Zels, you were very subdued last week. Almost as subdued as the Boks win the first 20. Can you explain? Are you in a better mood this week?
I wasn't fresh back from Japan. I'm feeling much better this week, although it was a hard loss to swallow.
But you're a conspiracy theorist. You believe that it's all part of the master plan.
I hope it is. I really do hope it is, because it was disappointing to go down like that. The first 40 minutes, ice cold. And I think the coaches have to take that result on the chin. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, though. There's no red flags. I'm not panicking about the World Cup, but I do think we are missing opportunities to do some constructive things with this Boks team.
Do we owe everyone an apology for being too optimistic?
Are you joking?
For being too optimistic?
How
you know how
can
many
you be too
people lost money on our recommendation that the Boks would win by 6 points?
The bookies have sent us our commission, mate.
Exactly. I underestimated just how cold those Japanese Oaks would be. I mean, I had doubts over Eben, and not to do with the passing of his father, but 3 months he'd been out with a shoulder injury. He'd had an operation. To go straight back into a test match in Auckland against the All Blacks. Lut hadn't played. Malcolm Marx is the one that just looked like he belonged. He always looks like he belongs. Play that Oak for 80 minutes a test. That's what
Agreed.
I think, until there's nothing left in the tank. But yeah, I don't think enough people are giving the All Blacks their due for the intensity, the pace, the tempo, and the physicality they played with in that opening 20. For us to only be 17 points down, I mean, we could have been 40 points down by halftime.
We should have been 40 points down. So in a way, it actually works against your argument. The All Blacks didn't do as much as they could have with what they had there. I've never seen a Boks team allow guys to just make easy meters around the fringes like that. The defense, our first-time tackles were terrible in the first half. We couldn't catch a high ball until the 38th minute.
What was in those innings?
They sent in there early to acclimatise. I think they got kickoff time wrong. I don't know. We just looked absolutely fast asleep.
Or maybe they had a Barbarians week. They just had a lack of time in Auckland. But yeah, they were just... Whenever you see a Boks team play and play well, it's the equivalent of an All Black team's, or the physicality is there, and there's double hits.
Yeah.
There's always a double hit. In contact, the guy goes back, the attacker goes back a meter. There's grunt. It was probably the most passive opening 20 I've seen from a Springbok team. Well, certainly in the Rassie and Jacques Nienaber era. Outside of, even when we were 15-0 down at Ellis Park, there was still some grunt in our game.
Yeah.
But here, they were beating us with that inside pass all the time. I mean, Will Jordan made a mockery of our defense, reminding me of Ben Choon in the glory days running against Ollie Leroux.
What a mismatch.
And just beating us around those fringes. Shannon Frizzell looked like Jonah Lomo on roids.
We made him look amazing.
Mike Cat thinks, thank God, another foot has been run over. Poor old Billy got trampled there. He was never going to make the tackle. But, is it... I've never known a South African public to be so happy with a defeat and a New Zealand public to be so angry with a victory.
Classic. Not the favourites. Yeah, I don't know. It all comes down to this World Cup preparation thing. If they win the World Cup, nobody even remembers these matches, obviously. And I feel like I'm beating the old drum here, but this time that we have leading up to the World Cup, it could have been used for lots of things, and mucking about with what we're doing at the moment, what we did on the end of your tour last year, what we did against Wales in that opener, just seems like an unnecessary waste of opportunity to me. And so I'm not worried about the World Cup. I think the Boks will switch on and they can do their thing at the World Cup and they're great. What concerns me is what happens when we have injuries. And like we've spoken about, Kwagga Smith is a guy that adds great value off the bench as an impact player when the pack is rolling downhill. They've done all the damage in the first half. But when you put a guy like that on the bench as your backup to Siya Kolisi, and Kolisi gets injured, then he becomes your starter. And then having a guy who's 99 kilograms or whatever he is as your starting open side in a test match against the All Blacks at Eden Park comes back to bite you. And that's my concern, is we haven't established a 10 behind Andre Pollard. We're not really sure what we're going to do if Siya doesn't start. Is Kwagga the open side for the World Cup if Siya doesn't make it? And for me, those are questions that we could easily have answered over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, maybe they didn't want to answer them before the World Cup, knowing that they're potentially going to play the All Blacks in the quarterfinal. If not, they would play them in a final. They would have to potentially play them to win the thing. But I thought the All Blacks showed a bit of a hand in the way they unlocked our defence. And then also their kicking game with, I thought was outstanding with Richie Mohanga, Geordie Barrett at 12, and obviously at 15, Bowden Barrett. And again, we were poor under the high ball, but it's hell of a hard to defend when they've got 3 kicking options. I've been particularly impressed with the way they've used Geordie Barrett at 12 and the kicks that he makes at 12 as well. So not taking anything away from the night that Villy and the 2 winners had at the back, and even Damien on a couple of occasions, no one seemed to be able to catch that ball. It reminded me of the All Blacks back 3 at Nelspruit a year ago. But again, credit to the All Blacks for the way they kicked and the way they chased. And I really think Will Jordan is a special player.
Jeez.
And I prefer Mark Tellier on the other wing. He's physical, he's strong. And if I look at their team, that's pretty much close to the best 15 that they'll put out at the World Cup. Whereas if I look at our team, and we chatted on WhatsApp with Rassie afterwards, and he said the coaches must take blame for selections, maybe their approach. But I think what it did answer was the loose forward trio that played against Australia. And I know a very different animal, Australia to New Zealand. But with Dwayne at 8, Van Staden and Peter Steff had so much more balance to it. And I think you may see them going back to that kind of a loose trio. And if not Marco van Staden, then Dion Fourie to get a start with a specialist fetcher. Because again, you go back to 2009 when we were dominating 3 tests against the All Blacks. Heinrich Brousseau was outstanding on the ground. When we have played a Dion Fourie, we've got some kind of reward from it as well.
Spot on.
And Marco van Staden probably had his best test against Australia. So having a fetcher specialist, which is not what South Africans like to do, because we like to have 3 tall loose forwards, 4 line-out options, 4 kick receive options. But the value of that fetcher is huge. And New Zealand particularly, and France as well, love to play a quick phase ball. We saw Aaron Smith just having the time of his life, milking 2 penalties because Frans Malherbe just wasn't quick enough to get back. He should have just stayed down. And Stephen Kitsoff as well. And just completely broke any momentum we had in that game when we were trying to fight back. Your thoughts on that, on the makeup of the loose trio?
So I definitely agree with you. I think Peter Steff du Toit is a lock at 7. Or we should lock him in at 7. I don't think he is a lock. I think he's great. I think he adds massive value there. For me, if a guy like Sia doesn't make it to start at 6, I would look at having a Dwayne Vermeulen at 8 with Jasper. Dwayne Vermeulen at 6 with Jasper at 8. Because I think Dwayne Vermeulen is a guy who can play to the ball. Maybe not the most rapid loose forward we have, but then Flo wasn't a rapid loose forward and he was great over the ball. And I think where we really lose value with Sia's not really a fetcher either, but he's a great ball carrier. He's athletic and he takes care of the attacking breakdown. And I think those are things that Dwayne can really add value in. So I would look at that sort of combination. I think everybody had an off day on the day in Eden Park, and I'm confident that everybody just about will bounce back. But
has Dwayne been one of the big pluses in these opening 2 tests?
He's been great. I think he's definitely answered the question, can he add value at the World Cup? We don't need him as a coach. We need him as a player.
Yeah, and I mean, he certainly looks like he's got a sprint in his step. He would look good for Ulster in the URC.
He said now, just before the series, that he's feeling in the best shape of his life, and it shows.
And Peter Steff as well. He was very good in Pretoria and he played a very different type of game. But the one thing was noticeable the minute Malcolm Marx, Peter Steff, and Dwayne came on. It was a different, and Adrian Snyman was a very different game at breakdown.
Well, at the scoreboard, 17-15, we won the second half.
And it could have been a bit more. I mean, at 23-15, we were right back in it. The conversion hits the post, it goes over, there's a score. But then immediately discipline failed us, gave away possession, and we were caught out again with that, a bit like the Stormers as well, with that wide kick. So it's an area that teams will target us on. I think rather now to be cut to pieces like that in a rugby championship game than that was a World Cup quarterfinal or final, and for the first time we don't have enough time to fix it.
Yes, no, 100%. I don't think that there's any learnings from that, though. I think the learning there is you can't play guys who are ice cold. Tactically, I don't think there's anything that people in the Boks management team are going to be thinking, wow, we didn't think about that just as well. We found that out now. I think everything that happened in that game, if you play ice cold against the All Blacks and you don't tackle, that's what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Damien Diolandi and Lukhanyo, they're great players. I don't think we're ever going to see them play as poorly as that. I don't think you can even make a measurement about who's playing at 10 when they get pulverized, like the pack gets pulverized. Not necessarily at set piece, but in the collisions in that first 25, 30 minutes. But I also think it's something I want to throw at you. By not having a recognised goal kicker to start with, does that not give the opposition a lot more comfort that they're not afraid to give away a penalty because it is a a hit and miss. We also second guess whether we should kick for poles or not. And then when we do, 17-0 down, we didn't trust our line-out in that period as well. So we were pretty shell-shocked.
Yeah, it creates doubt and grey areas and confusion. And I mean, outside of the conspiracy theory that they didn't want to win that game for whatever reason, it's difficult to explain why you would do that. A Bok team that doesn't have a designated goal kicker and the kickers will kick thing. It's difficult to explain why you would do that.
All right, a question that's been asked on social media. Pick your best 15, Rassie and Jock, and let the subs make up the bench, or pick a 23 that you want players to come in and make an impact, the famed bomb squad. You start your best, or do you integrate your best?
So I think the bomb squad has a role on its own, and the best players for the bomb squad are not necessarily the best players to start. Kwagga Smith is a great example. A guy like him, Dion Free, magic coming off the bench, great intensity, slow the ball down, steal ball, get around the park, athletic. The game's broken up a bit, they add value.
Mustard.
Yeah, but those guys not necessarily to start. So I think the starting lineup, historically, in terms of who are our best players, we've been getting it right the way we've been doing it. I just think that because we haven't established backups in key positions, when we've had injuries, we slot a guy who's a bomb squad player into the starting lineup, and then you don't get the results that you want.
And he should stay in the bomb squad.
He should stay in the bomb squad.
Malcolm Marx, Bongi.
Oh, that's such a tough one, man. I'm such a huge fan of both of those guys. For me, Malcolm Marx is out and out the best hooker in the world. But I think you get more value out of Bongi starting and Malcolm coming on than Malcolm starting and Bongi coming on. It's debatable, obviously, wide open. But if I had to choose one guy to play 80 minutes, it would be Malcolm Marx.
All right, and if you look at the makeup of the forward bench, Thomas the Toy, is he going to make it?
I mean, we've been asking that question for most of his career, haven't we?
It's like one of those great second-team players
Yeah.
who gets a chance for the first team and never quite has the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't really know how else to frame it. That's exactly it. He just doesn't seem to take the opportunity. Oxen Che is the guy that you want in that role, I would say. And then where's Trevor Nyakani? I'd love to see, again, more questions.
Has he come back from Paris?
Yeah, exactly, mate.
Is he still in Paris, dining out? Curtly Orense, has he done enough to kick that door down and say, you have
absolutely.
to pick me?
He has. If you look at him in isolation, I believe he has done enough to start. A side note, massive credit to Cheslin Colby that he almost came out of that game with 2 tries. Had very little ball and almost scored 2 tries. Incredible. I don't like a back three that's going to be Curtly, Cheslin, and Villy, because all the 3 of them are great creative players. You give them a sniff, they'll score a try, create a try. But in a game where you're isolating them with high kicks and being physical, I think it's an easy target against those 3 guys. I'd love to see a Kane and Moody add some balance to that back row, that back three. But definitely, on his performances, I would say KLA has done plenty to earn his spot in the starting lineup.
All right, the match against Argentina in a fortnight, do you see a 15 resembling something that would start in the big playoff game, or do you see them just taking a team out?
Well, you're a lot closer to Rassie. You tell me, what do you think is going to happen?
I think he'll mix and match again. I don't think we will see that match 23 they'll play Ireland. I don't think we'll see it before they play Ireland. That we'll see it the week before they play Ireland in their opening game.
Yes.
But up until that point, I don't see them doing anything major, and they gave away nothing against the All Blacks either. I thought they played a hell of a lot of rugby against Australia in Pretoria, but again, they didn't do anything notably creative in terms of, that's a new look Bok approach. They just pulverized them up front and actually played what was in front of them. So they haven't given away much. I just know that come the World Cup, their intensity will be there. They'll go into camp again. They will be one of the more conditioned sides, and they're a side with the capacity to build within a World Cup, and we saw that in 2019.
Yes.
They went to Japan early. They got their win against Japan. They got that out of their system. So 2015 wasn't going to be a factor, knowing they could potentially play Japan. So by the time they played them in the quarterfinal, and still to beat them 26-3 in front of 70,000 and millions around the world just wanting the Boks to lose, that 45-meter rolling maul try, it was one of the more emphatic defeats that Japan have suffered in the context of their World Cup. Then that brutal arm wrestle against Wales, and then just demolishing England and really peaking at the right time. So I read this thing from one of the Kiwi writers that the team's too old. They were just underdone. They were cold. And I think I got a bit carried away with those who started from Japan against Australia didn't look that cold, but I think it's because they played a very loose, flamboyant game as they do in the Japanese league. This one was a physical onslaught in the first 20, and we just weren't mentally or physically up to the challenge. We'll be better for it when we play the Pumas.
Speaking of cold now, so when does Handré come back in? When does he play for South Africa again? How do you see him getting back up to the right temperature?
Well, there's a lot of concern around him. I hear that his calf keeps on going, and a calf is one of those for a fly-off. It's a damn frustrating injury. So there is huge concern around him. And if he does get back, I mean, it's going to have to be those warm-up games just to get him game time. But a huge risk, you know.
So what happens at the World Cup with goal kicking? If Handré doesn't make it, what happens?
I think that Mani Lebok plays 10 and he kicks. It has to be that way. It would be criminal to go out in the World Cup because you kick 2 from 5. We saw that in 2011 with New Zealand. Perry Wipu had a glorious playoff run when he came on as a substitute kicker. He missed the first 5 kicks in the World Cup final. They would have been away by 15, 20 points against France. He kept on missing. France kept on handing in that game. And it took that Stephen Donald penalty, 8-0, and then France scored fortuitously 8-7, and then it was a very different game. So I think come World Cup time, definitely Lebok, if he stays fit, he will be the 10 option. And I mean, just that balance in the back row, and I think the rest of the guys will come through. But there's nothing major that will change. What will change is the intensity and the identity of the side we know. Disappointed that they got beaten. I really felt there was a chance to get a famous win in New Zealand. But the reality is 57 matches in Auckland, dating back to 1994. I was in the press box that day when Stephen Bishop failed to find touch and the French scored from the other end of the world. It was just a fantastic try to win the test and win the series 2-0. And then we drew, the Boks drew with them 18-all that same year in the third and final test, having already lost the series 2-0. So you don't go to New Zealand in Auckland comfortably and beat the All Blacks, and you certainly don't go in there with
a half-baked team.
Half-baked team, yeah. They were the half-baked team, to quote Eddie Jones. Quick one on the Wallabies. He says they were beating up Datsun.
Mate, you gotta love that. They'll be back. I still believe in the Wallabies. I believe in Eddie Jones. I hope I'm not going to end up in the same place I was with Dave Rennie, but I feel like Eddie will turn this team around. This is the teething pains for this new era of Wallabies rugby, and if anybody can get it right, I believe Eddie will. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they turn things around the next couple of weeks.
Gandalf Fisher, Laurie Fisher was with the Australian A side. They lost to Tonga. Also, losing to Tonga, you don't often see an Australian A side go down to teams like that. He said they look like a confused team. They want to play a certain way. They're not playing that certain way. I think some of the playing personnel don't buy into what Eddie wants to do. And that he's got a hell of a task, Eddie, to turn them around by the World Cup.
Yeah, I think it is very much a process. The difference is like Russie comes back in 2018 and he picks up a team, a pool of players that are amongst the most physical in the world. And Eddie's again in a situation where he's trying to find somebody that can be a hammer for him in the back line and can be a beast up front. So it's a very different problem. He's got lots of technical ability in Australia, but it's about the grit and the grunt and the edge. And I think he's trying to find who are the right guys for that. So I think he'll get it right, though.
All right, one final question. Ellis Park, the All Blacks, 15-0 up, came back brilliantly, won well, 17-0 up at Mount Smart. We came back into the game. They finished strongly again. Are we still the better team, or are they the better team?
If we meet them at the World Cup, we're going to win. We are the better team, for sure.
All right. Yeah. I like that, Zels.
For sure. No, that'll happen.
I like that.
Yeah.
I love your enthusiasm, your optimism. One thing I love about South Africans is it's like we never lose. But we do lose 37% of the time. Our historic win record is 63%. Not that anyone would tell you. Doesn't matter what happens. The next week we'll say Boks by 10. But we'll talk about Boks and Pumas next week. Baby Boks, terrible. We knew they were going to win it. France, head and shoulders above everyone else. 50 points to 14 in that final. They were fantastic. It's glory days for French rugby at the moment. They're winning everything in Europe, winning under 20s, winning the Six Nations. But the big key is, will they be able to handle the pressure of hosting a World Cup? Lots to talk about in the next few months, Rugger. Don't despair with the Boks. We'll be back. We'll be back next weekend at the old Ellis Park. What's it called now?
Emirates Airline.
Something like that, Emirates Airline. And we'll be back to our winning ways. We'll chat about that next week. Thanks, all.